Hello, everybody. How are you? Good. First of all, thank you for joining us today. And second, as Alex said, I'm Fernando, and I'm an economist. And today, I want to introduce you to a side of economics that is not very well known. By this, I mean that in many markets, consumers stick to their decisions even when that behavior is not longer optimal. So for example, today we have a lot of Northwestern employees here. And Northwestern offers its employees the opportunity to choose a health insurance plan among a set of options. What we know is that some people choose very well the first time, but then they stick to that plan over time, even though they need something different, or if premiums and plan characteristics are changing. More in general, you can think about people who don't have access to employer-provided health insurance. For these people, they have to choose an insurance company, such as Aetna or Blue Cross Blue Shield, and they also have to choose a health insurance plan. What we know is that people stick to plans and to companies, even though prices change significantly over time. Now, to include grad students in this presentation, I want to talk about cable TV and internet providers. Most of us enroll in one of these companies following a very attractive offer. And this offer normally lasts for 6, 9, or 12 months. Then the offer expires, we stick to the company, and we no longer pay those very attractive prices. Does this sound familiar to you? I hope so. Now, the problem is that this kind of behavior generates inefficiencies. And these inefficiencies arise because when consumers behave in this way, firms face a trade-off between increasing prices or decreasing prices. If they increase prices, they will forget about getting new consumers, but they will increase the amount of profits they get from their existing consumers. On the other hand, if they decrease prices, they will attract new consumers, but they will lose profits on their existing consumers. This trade-off does not appear when consumers do not show this kind of behavior. And because of that, we have misallocation of resources, which means that there are inefficiencies. So in my research, I asked the question of what causes this behavior. Is it possible to identify what drives consumer behavior? If that is possible, can we design policy to reduce the negative consequences of this behavior? I studied this question in the context of retirement investment. Retirement investment is something that's common across the world. People have to save for the time they retire. I studied the case of my country, Chile. And this system is very similar to the system in the US, the 401k system in the US. In particular, people have to save resources by themselves. Let me start telling you a little bit about the system so you can compare it to the 401k system in the US. This system has three main players: a regulator that's going to define the rules of the system, and enrollees or people and pension funds that will interact with each other. The regulator is going to set the contribution rate by which enrollees are going to save. In Chile, people save 10% of their monthly income. The regulator, at the same time, is going to define the rules according to which pension funds are going to compete. It sets the rules that say what pension funds can and cannot do. And then enrollees and pension funds will interact with each other. Enrollees are going to choose a pension fund. And then pension funds will invest their enrollees' resources and charge them fees for their work. And these fees range between 2 and 4% of income. Well, what do I observe in the data? I follow 9,000 people over a period of 14 years, and I observe every decision they made during those years. 55% of my sample never switched a pension fund, even though there was a lot of entry in the market, a lot of exit, mergers, and prices changed significantly. And those people who did switch less than 5 times, most of them. So that's very, very little. And again, it raises the question of why? Why do we observe people behaving in this way? This setting is very interesting because it allows us to decompose the answer to this question in two. First of all, we could ask whether it is too difficult to choose. Those of you who have retirement investment know that whenever you are deciding, you have to go over financial information. For you, is that hard or easy? Okay, I guess it's hard. For most people, it's very hard, and I'm going to call that the decision cost. You have to gather information. This is financial information, and you have to analyze it, and then you have to make a decision. On the other hand, there is a bureaucratic process that's required when you want to switch among your options. You have to waste time. You have to go to an office, and this means that you might decide to remain with your current pension fund, either because it is difficult to choose a different one or because it is difficult to switch. And I'm going to call the second one the enrollment cost. What I'm doing my research is to use economic tools that are described in terms of mathematical formulas. With these tools, I model consumer behavior. I model preferences over pension funds. How much people value fees relative to returns. How much people value characteristics such as reputation. Well, these kind of formulas allow me to model these in a mathematical way. Then I take this model and I put it into an estimation routine that's called simulated maximum likelihood. With that, I estimate people's preferences. And I quantify the level and magnitude of these different costs that they face when they decide. And then to study how policy may affect this market, I take this model, these estimated preferences, and I embed them into a dynamic pricing game where pension funds compete for enrollees by choosing prices under different sets of rules that are defined by the different policies that a regulator might implement. Now, what do I find? What I have here is the distribution of both the decision cost, the cost associated to analyzing information, and the enrollment cost, the cost of facing a bureaucratic process. What you observe here is that the decision cost is much larger than the enrollment cost, which means that if you are designing policy, you probably want to target the decision cost. You can do that by using personalized information. You can send emails to people saying, Fernando, you are choosing the wrong plan. On the other hand, both figures show that there is considerable dispersion among the population, which means that not everybody is going to react in the same way to the email. A lot of people will not read your email, but some other people will. So when you are designing policy, you not only have to target the right source of inertia, but you also have to target the right people. Now, what does it mean in terms of money? If you take the median American and you put him in this system, you will see that, well, according to the US Census Bureau, the median American makes around $27,000 a year. This person would save $2,700 per year for retirement and would pay $810 in fees. If you are able to make people react to your emails so they choose accordingly, and you eliminate the decision cost, the cost of analyzing financial information, what would happen is that prices would go down by 32%. And this is just a consequence of people being more active in the market. Because people are more active, pension funds will have to react accordingly, and they will decrease prices to enroll these people. This person would save around $260. On the other hand, if instead of implementing this kind of policy, you use, for example, online enrollment that would reduce the cost of enrolling in one of the pension funds, prices would only go down by 5.3%. And this person would save around $40. This is a consequence of the enrollment cost being much lower than the decision cost, which means that, of course, this is not what is driving behavior. So again, we have the first main conclusion of my research: target policy in the correct way. Identify and choose what is really driving consumer behavior. But now the second and most important result. Suppose you have a lot of resources and you decide to implement policy to attack both the cost of analyzing information and the cost of enrolling. Well, most of us would say probably that's the ideal scenario. Well, no. What happens is that if you target both, what's going to happen with prices is that they will go down by 30%. You would save less than if you only eliminate the decision cost. And this is a consequence of the trade-off that has been introduced by inertia in consumer behavior. When people have low cost associated to decision-making, firms will try to compete for them because in equilibrium, people will switch and firms will try to compensate them for the cost of switching. And they will charge prices below the ones that they would charge in a frictionless market. So let me conclude by saying that if you really want to design efficient policy, you need to identify what is driving consumer behavior, and in particular, what are the sources of inertia. Thank you.